Good morning. I am Joe Kovacic and I work in the Disa Emerging Technology Directorate. We'd like to welcome you to today's technical exchange meeting. GovOS will be presenting its application studio platform in today's session. Need to go over some administrative items before we get started. First, please mute your DoD 365 joint Microsoft Teams sessions. Second, this session is being recorded to allow future screening and presenting capability by members of DISA and the DoD community. Third, this is a public forum, so no proprietary or sensitive information should be shared in this session. Fourth, we encourage questions during the session, so please use the raise hand function in the Teams menu to alert the presenters when you have a question. You can also enter your questions in written form in the chat area anytime during the presentation. Questions will be addressed in the order they are received. I must provide the following full disclosure and disclaimer. This technical exchange meeting does not infer any intention by DISA or the DoD to enter into an acquisition, contract, purchase, or to present a capability. This session is purely for informational purposes only. We do not control how session participants will proceed with the conveyed content. Access to the technical exchange session video, slide deck, and other artifacts will be made available through the National Security Innovation Network website, whose link is provided in the TEM session invitation that each of you received. I've also posted a link in the chat area for the slide deck if you want to download that, and I will repost that link again there shortly. And with all that said, let us commence with the presentation. So over to you, GovOS.
All right, thank you for that, Joe. I do appreciate that. We're going to get this presentation started off with, like Joe said, GovOS, and then we're also working with our partners, Abraham's Consulting. We're going to be presenting our studio presentation, our studio application. And with that, we're going to let Abraham's kick it off, and then we'll get into our GovOS presentation from there. So Abraham's, take it away.
All right. So good morning, everyone. My name is Mike, a Director of Operations from Abraham's Consulting. So Abraham's Consulting is a minority women-owned small business enterprise that serves technology needs for small, medium, and enterprise businesses for over 15 to 16 years, starting from 2006. As a full-cycle IT service company, we provide security, disaster recovery, cloud 24/7 help desk, storage 24/7 security operations center, hardware and software sales, and any other technology solutions, which includes niche solutions. We offer security network storage, consulting services for managed cloud and professional services. We are also certified in the fields of 8-Star 3, SBA. We have vendor partners from Lenovo, Citrix, Veeam, Proofpoint, Device 42, and some other big names in the industry.
All right, thank you, Mike, for that. And I'll go ahead and take it from there. Thank you, everybody, for attending this morning. We really do appreciate it. Good morning to everybody. I want to do a couple of quick slides for you before we kick off into our demonstration here. First off, I wanted to do an introduction slide. My name is Michael Cohan. I am the account executive for GovOS. We also have on the call David Montville. He is our Senior Vice President of Sales. And then lastly, we have Austin Logie. He is our solutions consultant, and he's going to be the one that's going to take you through our demonstration today on our studio application. And then I want to give you a brief highlight of our studio product and our GovOS company and who we are as a company. We are a government-only company, hence our name GovOS. So our experience is we work with over 800 county, cities, municipalities, and state governments with 100 million plus citizens using our solutions in total. So we are a true native cloud solution software that is supported by Amazon Web Services. So we do require strict security. So we do two-factor authentication, we do SOC 2, we have redundancies as well. So also, we have designated conversion teams. So once you start a contract with GovOS, we're going to designate a conversion team for you. So we can get that process started and kick off for you on the onboarding side. And then we're also going to provide you a single point of contact to help support you and your team as well. So you see that quote over there to the side, the GovOS has transformed the way we do business from Dallas County. We have tons and tons of quotes just like that. So when our customers started using our GovOS Studio platform, they didn't realize how they can automate and streamline their processes. They implemented our software, and it's been a game changer for them on the automation piece of it. Now, a little background on our Studio technology and what it is. Like I said, it's a full cloud-based software. So our goal is to help transform how you're currently doing your paper, PDF, your manual processes now. We want to help automate and digitize this process to make it a seamless digital and be able to create digital workflows for you as well. What's that going to do for you? That's going to help you improve your transparency with your constituents. We also have an e-signature solution as well. So that's going to provide you, so if you have contracts or anything that needs a digital signature and electronic signature, we have that solution that comes with our product as well. We're going to be able to collect payments for you. You could do attachments. You could create custom workflows on the back end to route these forms, route these processes where they need to go for approval. Like it says here, endless customization. You're going to be able to customize those workflows, these forms, how you see fit, and what best is going to help automate your solutions. And like I said, we are a cloud-based solution, so there's no hardware to install. It's going to be an easy implementation, easy setup for you guys. We're going to provide you with the ADA compliancy and also premium support and services as well. I also wanted to touch base on our workflows, our use cases. So we, like I said, we are government, so we could do anything from internal to external, citizen facing. So any kind of use cases that you're thinking of in your head right now that you are just having so much trouble with, it's such a manual process, citizen facing to internal facing. For example, HR departments is one of our big departments. So we help a lot with the onboarding process, the offboarding process, any kind of contracts that get routed for approval that need to be signed off on. We have a lot of customers using us for that to help automate and streamline those businesses. So as you're sitting here thinking about, different use cases that you wish you could help automate, or you wish you can automate and get rid of those manual processes, we can help you with any internal and external facing processes. And then from there, I am going to kick it on over to Austin to take over from here. Austin, you're on mute if you're trying to talk.
I'm now unmuted. Thank you, Michael. Well, as we begin this demonstration, we like to begin with a just very simple question. What is a form? And for most agencies we speak with, a form it's a piece of paper or it's a PDF file that someone has to download and fill out, or maybe print out paper, complete, and then turn back to the organization. And while that's true, forms like that are ultimately limited in what they can do, because we see forms as just the tip of the iceberg, so to speak, and beneath the surface, there's just a lot more to consider. So the actual user experience of someone filling out that form, what's that like? Is it ADA compliant and accessible for all users? Does it need to be signed? Are other attachments required, outside documents, things like that? And then ultimately, once it's sent in, who needs to approve the form? What's the workflow in place that needs to happen? And then once it's all finished, where does that get stored? What do we need to do with the data? Does it have to be exported out into another system? So there's just a lot involved when you really think about any form out there. And that's where this Studio product really shines. It just brings us all together as a complete package to really give you the full experience of a form and a form-based process after the fact. So this slide helps explain that a little bit more. So this is the look of a typical journey of a form, probably similar to a process you might have in place for paper or PDFs today. But every step you see here can really be enhanced or completely automated with Studio. So an forms administrator would build that form. We have several tools to do that. And once it's built, it has to be made available to either the public, your citizens, or other staff members for internal forms. They find it, they fill it out. Maybe they have to include a payment, again, an attachment, maybe they'll sign it and then submit that back to your organization. And that is where all the processing takes place. So, who does it get routed to? Who has to review this? Who needs to add more attachments? Things like that. Big part of that is communication. So letting people know, it's your turn to sign, or letting them know what the status is as they're checking on the progress of it. And then once it's all filled out, like I said, it has to be stored somewhere. And we store both the data that was captured as well as the document itself. And as I said, there's options for kind of what happens next at the end of the process there. So that's the end-to-end journey to keep in mind as we go through this. And with that, we're going to move into the demonstration. So I'm going to show you 3 different types of forms that are possible to build in the Studio product. And those are docs, web forms, and wizards. So you'll see an example of each one of these. This is the first type. So this is a doc. And this is essentially a PDF. A doc is a PDF that you upload into the system and convert into the doc. So this is a PDF that I actually found on the Department of Defense website, Record of Emergency Data. And this is, one example, but I just encourage you to envision your own forms acting in a very similar manner. Like Michael said, whether those are externally facing to the public or internal forms, they all can be built out in a similar fashion with the workflow at the end, which you'll see in a few minutes. So starting with this first example, this is like I said, record of emergency data, and you can see all these yellow boxes on this page have been added by me. So I uploaded this into the system, added all of our features and fields to it, published it. It has its own unique URL up here. So the idea is that you take this URL and you put it on your website, or maybe an intranet or a portal, wherever you want to make forms available. So when someone clicks that link, it doesn't download a PDF. It actually opens them up into a viewer like this, just in an internet browser. And of course, you can customize how this looks. I've added seal here. You could add office information here on the right. There's all kinds of styling options. You could even embed this directly into your web page. So lots of look and feel configurations, but of course, the most important part is actually getting this data, right? Capturing the information that you need. And we have a lot of different ways to do that, different rules and logic we can put in place to make sure that someone is filling this out exactly the way that you need them to every single time. So in this case, starting with the name field, I made this required. So this little red star here means that the user has to put something there in order to move on. So required fields, obviously a really important way to reduce any kind of back and forth, or so you don't have incomplete forms. So they have to fill it out, every field that you mark as required. So I'm going to say this is going to be Peter Parker filling this out, maybe Peter K. Parker. And we can put little placeholder texts when you want to communicate the format of the data that you need. So for example, social has the 3 digits, 2 and then 4 in this case, so the user knows what's expected of them. We could even enforce that, so they have to put that many digits, for example. Different ways to make sure, again, they're filling it out the way you need them to. Checkboxes, of course, are supported, radio buttons, and I'm not going to fill this entire form out, but I think you get the idea. It's just an interactive form, different fields, checkboxes, they would fill this all out. Maybe we have Mary Jane is the spouse.
Hey, Austin.
Yeah.
We got 2 questions real quick, if you don't mind, while you're. So Joseph wants to know, does your platform provide a test mode to evaluate a form's journey?
A test mode to evaluate the journey. Yeah. So you can build the process, aka journey, beforehand, definitely ahead of time, and it won't actually begin and run until you deploy it. So in that sense, it's a way to test and make sure it works before it's live.
All right, and one more question by Joseph. Assume the submit and sign feature on the form can entail a digital signature from a CAC/PIV/smart card.
I'm not familiar with those ones. This is actually our own proprietary e-signature, which we use on our forms. And I'll show you how it looks in a minute here, but maybe if you want to clarify what those other options were, I've just not heard of those before. But I will certainly show the e-signature component. Thanks for the questions. So a few more fields here, but again, I think you get the idea. It's just a fairly interactive form. Texas, maybe 7777. And so Peter would fill this out. We do have a save capability down here. So if someone needed to save their progress, come back to it, it's actually going to prompt them for their email, and they will be emailed a link to their form, which they can then click, tomorrow or next week and reload it with all of their information saved there, and they can keep filling it out. So save as possible and helpful for especially longer forms. This one's only a few pages, so I would imagine that most folks would be just kind of going through this in one go. So I'm gonna pretend this is all filled out in the interest of time. And the last few steps here begin with the submit and sign button. So first I wanted to include an attachments window. This particular form, I didn't see any place that asked for attachments, but I always like to show it even when the example doesn't ask for it, just to show how easy it is to include outside documents. Maybe in this case, they needed some kind of a proof of identity of the spouse to confirm, their own personal information. So if that were the case, or if any other form that you have needs, a receipt or a site plan, anything, we can click there to upload a file. It can be brought in online from one of these accounts if you have one, or just straight from your computer. So I have, for instance, a sample driver's license here that I can upload and attach with this form. And this file will live with this form through the entire process. So anyone on your staff who's receiving these can always view attachments at any time and make sure that they are, in this case, she is who she says she is, or whatever you need to see on that attachment. So I've uploaded that. I click continue, and here is our e-sign technology. So we ask for a name and an email and a signature. So Peter would enter just that. I will use my own email. There's 3 different ways to add a signature here on the form. You can keep it typed out like this. You can draw it with your mouse, or if you're using this, filling this out on the phone, you can just use your finger here. All of our forms are mobile friendly. You can also upload an image of your signature. Some people have those saved as like a JPEG file, but I'm just gonna keep mine typed and check this box that says I agree that this is a legally binding contract, and our signature is accepted in all 50 states. So I will apply this to the form, and you will see down here at the bottom of this page that's been applied, and then I have a little text space for rank, rate, or grade if they're a service member. Let's say Peter is just a civilian, so he would just need to sign. And this form's a little interesting. I noticed that it asks for a witness signature, which isn't necessarily always the case. Sometimes this would just be emailed to the next signer, but in this case, with witness, I'm making the assumption that they would be with Peter, with the user, as they fill this out, witnessing this. So that's totally fine. When a signature like this is asked, when you have more than one person at the same device, essentially, you can just add a little next signer button here, and I will click that, and now I'm going to ask for the witness signature. But at this point, all the data is locked down. I can't make any changes since Peter's already signed it, except down at the bottom, the witness can sign, and they can enter their rank, rate, or grade now if needed. So they can fill it out and then submit and sign the same exact way. So back to our e-sign window, and continue with the Spider-Man theme. Let's just say this is Aunt May is the witness, and I will use my own email once more. Signature is already typed out. We'll keep it that way. Check the box, and Aunt May can apply her signature as well. So we have both signatures done. The date has already been automatically stamped. Just another feature of the system. Whenever you can reduce typing, I'd say it's always recommended. So in this case, that the correct date is showing when they signed, and now we can finalize and submit. And now this document gets sent back to your organization, and you'll be notified by email, or whoever needs to be notified by email would be let know that, hey, in this case, a new record of emergency data has been submitted, and they can click a link and open it up and review it. That gets more into the workflow side of things. Before we go there, I did want to show the 2 other types of forms in the system. So this one, like I said earlier, it was a doc. So this is the ideal when you have an existing form that you want to convert and bring it online and make it easier to fill out with all the rules and signable attachments, all the features we saw. So that's one type. And now we're going to move into the second type, which are web forms. And I'm actually going to build one from scratch just to show how quick that can be. So web forms are for when you don't have an existing form. Maybe you just need to build something out quickly, or it can be a longer form, totally up to you. But they are more of a modern look and feel. As you'll see, you're not confined to that 8.5 by 11, PDF page. Web forms are almost like miniature web pages. So they're just a lot more flexible, and there's a lot more types of fields you can add to them. So I'm here in a web form editor, completely blank canvas except for a submit button up here at the top. And on the left, I have all my different form elements. So in other words, all the different types of fields that I can add to this form. So I'm going to do a fairly simple one just to give you the idea of how it could work for you. I'm going to do a public records request form. So up here with the heading is the first thing I'm going to add, which is essentially the title. If you hit this gear icon, it'll always pop open the field settings. So we're going to call this a public records request. And we're going to ask for just some basic information. So pulled from here on the left. So let's ask for the name of the person requesting, and how about their email and phone number. And you'll see these fields just stack on top of each other really nice and neatly. And how about a multiple line input field? And I can ask for, how about a description of information requested. Save that. So these are a lot of your standard field options. You could do check boxes really easily, or ask them to upload files. Maybe we want their full address in case they need to be mailed this record.
Hey, also one more question.
Sure thing.
Can the forms be viewed on all web browsers? Yes.
Yes, they can.
And then the CAC equals the common access card that the DoD uses for system authentication. So that was going back to the submit and sign e-signature piece.
I see. Okay, so when it comes to signatures, no. However, we do have single sign-on options just for accessing the system. So if whoever needed to actually log in, and we'd have to talk more, but that sounds like a potential way to access using SSO. But again, whoever asked that, happy to speak with you further afterwards, just to clarify exactly what you're looking for there. Appreciate the questions though. So like I was saying, we have our popular field types at the top, and then below we can do just a lot more things. So we could, for instance, embed a YouTube video onto this form. There's a whole survey question to gather, say, feedback on something. If you wanted for ratings, maybe an employee review form. Event tools. So this is where you can actually ask people to select from a date and a time for an event. So maybe to reserve a piece of equipment or a facility. So you can show, X amount of days and time slots, and they can choose from one of those. Those are our event tools. All kinds of specialty fields. I'm not going to talk about every single one here, but just some highlights. So this is where the signature is stored, for instance. So let's ask for that on this field. And how about a Google reCAPTCHA? So, confirming that the person submitting this is human. They have to pick the pictures that have a stop sign in it, for instance. Great way to cut down on spam for public-facing forms. You can sketch images. There's enter custom HTML. So there's a lot more you can do here. All kinds of formatting tools to make this look correct. And I'm just going to add one more for this example, which is our Google Translate button. So you can actually automatically translate the entire form on the fly. So if a user doesn't speak English as their first language, they want to understand it in a different language, they can. So I'm going to bring this up to the top just so they can do that at the start. And here we have a fairly simple public request form, public records request. It took me all of a couple minutes, but hopefully you get the idea that this isn't very technical at all. We've designed this to be very intuitive. So really anyone from any kind of department who may have a form they need to build very quickly, they can do that. After you build a couple of these, you really get the hang of it. It's not too difficult. Don't have to get IT involved every single time you need to build a new form. So I've built this out. We have various settings you can adjust up here. So you can customize, for instance, what the thank you page says after someone submits it. So, we'll be in touch or something like that. Of course, all the styling and branding options. And then you can, this is where you can set up payments. So if a form has, say, a $50 application fee, you can ask for credit card information in a little pop-up right over the form itself when they submit. And then other rules you can build to make sure people get notified when a form gets sent in. So several different settings. Again, happy to talk through more if any of this things might make sense for you or your organization. But in this case, yep, go ahead.
We got 2 more questions for you.
Okay.
Are any browser plugins required for any of the GovOS platform functionality?
No plugins required.
All right, and then can endpoint and browser security services hamper the functionality of GovOS forms and processes?
Browser security, I don't believe so. I've never run into any browser security issues with any of our forms or the backend side of the system. Thank you for the questions. So I have created this form. I'm going to click View now, which essentially publishes this. So it has its own URL automatically generated. By the way, you can customize this URL if you wanted to match, your department's branding, for instance. But here is that form, and a couple notes about web forms. They are ADA compliant, so they can be read by screen readers, which is great for visually impaired users who need to understand what the form says. They are also more mobile friendly than docs. The fields themselves are responsive, so they'll shrink down based on what size screen you're using. So it's device agnostic in that sense. And web forms can also be translated, like I mentioned. So up here at the top, we have this select language button. And say someone wanted to read this in Spanish, they can choose that language. And now every field is going to be translated on the fly. So helpful little tool there for, again, users who need to read it in other languages. And otherwise would just be filled out the same way that I filled out the doc. We have the name and the email, all your standard fields, the reCAPTCHA at the bottom. So that is a web form. Again,
one more question. Awesome.
Sure.
How do you create free forms or fields that are not provided by GovOS?
Free forms? Is that what you said?
Yeah, how do you create free forms or fields that are not provided by GovOS?
Sure. So back here in the edit form editor, this was a free form that wasn't, it's not an email or phone number. This was just a multiple line input. You could also do a single line input. So if I choose that type, it's just going to add a blank text field essentially, and you decide what should be, what it should be labeled as, whether it's required or read only, etc. So we do have options when it's a question that we don't have a pre-built field for instance. And same with checkboxes as well, by the way. You can very easily add a checkbox group and say something like, have you requested information in the last 3 years? Maybe that's just a field you want to add that we don't have available, and you can add as many options as you'd like, maybe yes or no, and create a custom checkbox very quickly. So hopefully that answers your question. Was that the second one you said there, Michael?
Also, can you define field input type as well?
Yeah, so input types, text fields, checkboxes. You can also, you can limit character counts and enforce validation. So if it's an email field, they have to, enter a text string that looks like an email address essentially with an @ something dot something. So yes, there are options for validating the format of the data types. Alrighty, thank you. So that is web forms, second type. And the third type of form that you can build in the system, third and final, is a wizard. So we call these a hybrid approach. It's actually a combination of the first two. So it's when you want to present the form as a web form, so you get all the advantages there. It's ADA compliant, it can be translated, it's really mobile friendly, it looks modern. but you still need a PDF filled out at the end. So the way we can set it up is that it asks all the same questions that that document asks for as a web form, and then we have a way to automatically fill the PDF based on the answers that were asked. So the best way to see how this works is just to see an example. So I actually have one here that I built ahead of time. So this is actually a W-4 tax form, and I've converted it into a wizard in the system. So it's going to ask all the same questions that that W-4 tax form asks, just in a different format. So this obviously doesn't look like a tax form right off the bat, but I can click to read the instructions, for instance, and specific instructions, everything that's at the top of that tax form, and then click next and start filling it out using, required fields or drop downs for a state, and again, all the same questions that that form asks. So let's say Peter is going to fill this out again. He lives on Main Street, and let's say Austin, Texas. And all the other questions, we can do a date picker, for instance, so they don't have to type it in. They can just choose when their, in this case, first date of employment is. Maybe it's in a few weeks, and he's married, single or married, filed separately. Next, ask more questions that form asks. Once again, and in this case, if they don't have dependents, they can move on. If they do, now we ask for more information about those dependents. So we call these conditional fields. So it's just a way to really tailor the experience to the user who's actually filling it out. They're only going to see the fields that are relevant to them, that they actually have to fill out, which is another benefit of a wizard. On tax forms especially, can be confusing, I think, and when people only see the fields that apply to them, I think it makes for a better experience overall. So let's say they don't have any dependents, can choose next, and maybe it does have other adjustments. And once again, we have some more fields that pop down. Maybe let's do an extra $500 in withholding. Oops, this one is marked as a validate, so I can't use the dollar amount. So we have that entered, and now when I hit continue, that is where the magic happens, so to speak, of actually populating the document. So now we have the actual W-4, and it's all been filled out based on the questions that were answered. So this is almost like TurboTax, if anyone has used that, where it asks questions about, your income and how your year went, family information, and TurboTax actually fills out an IRS tax form at the end of the process, which you actually never see. But it's the same idea here. You're asking questions in an easy to understand way, ADA compliant, translate it if you need it, but you still get that document that perhaps your organization has to file with another agency internally. So you still have it all filled out, and it can still be e-signed and submitted in the same manner as we saw in the first example. So this is the third type of form. Again, we call this a wizard. So just to reiterate, we saw docs, when you have an existing form that you want to convert and make it easy to fill out online. We have web forms when you want to build a new form completely from scratch, and with all the advantages of a web form, flexible and mobile friendly. And then we have wizards, which is the combination of the two, presenting the form as a web form, but still filling out a document on the back end. So those are the three types of forms in the system that you can build. And the second part of this demo is to talk about the processes and workflows that you can put in place to manage what happens after they get filled out by someone. Just going to pause real quick here, Michael, unless there's any other questions that have popped up in the meantime.
I do not see any other questions. Are there any questions that haven't been posted yet in the chat? Next question. Okay, I think Austin, you are good to move on.
All right, so we're now going to slightly switch gears, and rather than looking at this from the perspective of an end user, so maybe someone from the public, Peter Parker, we're now going to look at this from the perspective of an administrator on your side, someone who's actually, putting the process in place that a form will follow, and the one who's actually monitoring forms after they get sent in. So that is this tab right here. So I've now logged into our workflow back end here. And we have several ways to manage a process. You know, the form itself, kind of the tip of the iceberg, like I said earlier, and now we're going under the surface to see what you can actually do with this data. So in this case, this is one example that I built ahead of time of a public records request, similar to that web form that I built just a little bit earlier. And this is a process that we built out to kind of guide that form through the flow that we want it to follow. And you'll see here, it's obviously visually, you know, engaging. I think it's a way to just map it out so people can understand, you know, how it starts and what needs to happen next. And there's different routes. I'm sure you've seen similar workflow diagrams before. But not only is this a visual tool where you can, you know, drag these different types on here and connect them really quickly to build out a process, but each one of these components is actually, it corresponds to some sort of decision or automation that takes place. And I can, you know, add and remove these, of course. But in this case, I'm going to walk through this flow just as a way to give you an idea of what's possible using this FOIA request as an example. So starting with the yellow circles, these start circles, this is how this begins. And if I double click into this, you can see that we have different configurations for each one of these components. But in this case, this is starting with a Studio form, which is a public records request form that I built. And you can see that you can configure this, and even a big part of this start is mapping the various form elements so that you can move this data efficiently onto, say, other forms or into the viewer here. So all that data is captured and mapped appropriately because it'll be used throughout the process. So that's an example of how a process could begin, say with a web form that you build ahead of time. And then once that form is submitted, it moves into the second step, which in this case is a designee reviewing that request. So these are these blue task rectangles. And, you know, tasks are something that someone must do. So oftentimes it's an additional form they have to complete. If I click into this, you can see we can assign this to various people, maybe different team members who own this task. They're in charge of, you know, they're responsible for doing something essentially. So in this case, that they would review that request, and then next we have a decision. So these green diamonds are either manual or automated routing points to send the form somewhere. So in this case, we're asking, is the request approved? And this is more of a manual decision, right? The designee has to say yes or no, essentially, based on what was requested. Another example of this is a purchase request. So this makes a lot of sense for, say, procurement, and a possible decision there would be if the amount of what someone is requesting to purchase is over $10,000, then route it to someone for approval. If it's under $10,000, route it to another person for approval, depending on that total. And again, that could be automated. So based on what the total is in the form, which they said at the beginning, it could then automatically route to the correct person. So that's decisions. Like I said, it moves the form one way or another. In this case, it's approved or not. So on the right here, we have not approved. And then we would notify the requester. There would be another final ruling about that, and then send the kind of the final ruling back to the requester to end it. So this notify requester is a robot, and that is another type here in the system. And robots are, they do things like send automated emails, notifying someone, in this case, notifying the requester that it wasn't approved. And you can see if I click into the robots, you can set up that email. There's a lot of options for who it's coming from, who the reply should be, subject, you know, the body of that email, which of course we can use pieces of information that we collected on that form in the email. So the requester's name, for instance. So this reduces, you know, the time that someone would have to take to type out that email and say, you know, hello, Peter. Instead of that, it's going to automatically pull it from the form. So it's automated in that sense. So that's robots for, you know, sending emails. We also, you know, in this case, if it is approved, the department would actually provide the documents, and then maybe they have to decide if payment is needed. If so, like I mentioned earlier, payments can be configured on forms. So maybe a new form is sent to ask them for, whatever the total amount is, they enter their credit card information, and we automatically email them a digital copy of whatever record is that they need. And then we have the end where the entire process finishes. So, just kind of a snapshot into what's possible. Again, we're not getting into every detail here, but this is just an easy way to build a process, and within that process, create, tasks, decisions, robots, ways to manage what's possible. Another type of robot I didn't mention are integrations. So we have ways to push data to other systems. Usually that makes sense, especially at the end of a process. We do have an open API to send data out in documents to other systems. Maybe you have a document management system that every piece of, every form has to end up in eventually. So we could integrate to that with an API. We also have some pre-built integrations as well. Latest one that's coming out soon is a Power Automate integration. So that'll be, ready to go out of the box, essentially, to send data to various Microsoft applications using Power Automate. So that is the workflow side of things. Any questions there before I wrap up? Anything come through, Michael?
I don't see any new questions, no.
All righty. Well, just to give you an idea here, the government of Barbados, so many clients experienced shutdowns during COVID, and that really started a lot of them down this path of bringing services online, automating them. Barbados was one. They were able to transform a COVID assistance form from an email attachment to a full-fledged solution with status changes and routing and notifications all in just a couple of days. So just to give you an idea of how we're partnering with our customers to make their lives easier and help their citizens make an impact in their lives as well. So with that, thank you very much for your time. Really appreciate it. Just wanted to show what's possible. Hopefully you understand this is a very flexible platform that you can use to digitize and automate just about any form or form-based process that you might have. We'd be happy to show you more if it makes sense for your organization. So with that, I will send it back to Michael.
Yeah, thank you for that, Austin. And I do want to bring this up that it is roles and permission based as well. So if you have different people in different departments that had different responsibilities to approve, to disapprove, you could set those triggers. You could set those process. You can see if there's a form stuck in a process, it's been stuck for a couple of days. You can see where it's stuck at in that process. You'll be able to have access to all that. So it is roles and permission based on the back end, on the admin side of it. Also, just looking at the workflow piece of it, I do want to just want to mention that we will, during implementation and onboarding, we will build out, a couple use cases for you, but we're also provide you training as well. So our goal is to get you guys trained up on our solution, so you could go out and build out any kind of workflow, any kind of use case that you're looking to do on your own. But also keep in the back of your mind that we are here to help you as well. So if you're having issues implementing a use case or building out one, we do have a support team that's here as well to help you out. But our end goal is to definitely get you guys trained up on it, make sure you feel comfortable with the solution, and give you that ability to build these out on your own. So with that being said, thank you, Austin. Are there any other questions for me or Austin?
If anyone has any further questions, please feel free to unmute at this time and ask them verbally. Thank you. Okay, it appears we don't have any further questions from the audience. I'm gonna I'd like to thank GovOS and for coming in today and presenting the capability. I'd like to thank Abrams Consulting for also helping with this and providing the referral for this technology for today's technical exchange session. We appreciate their support. I'd like to thank everybody in the audience for your time today, for taking part in this session. If you have interest in further exploring this capability, the contact information for reaching out to the company is on the screen. So please contact Ms. Angela Gibson. for further discussions about the GovOS platform capability. I also would like to, if you don't feel comfortable reaching out to them directly, you can reach out to my organization, Disa Emerging Technology Directorate, and we can intercede in discussions with the company. I also like to put a plug in for our Disa Works Innovation Lab. This is a lab that Disa has set up in Columbia, Maryland. It's off-site. We are using this innovation lab to perform testing, evaluation, piloting of technologies and capabilities that are in the commercial sector for potential incorporation into the DoD and DISA infrastructure. And we are in the same building as Dreamport, which is Cyber Command's innovation lab. So if you have interest in exploring this technology in conjunction with our innovation lab, please again reach out to my organization for further discussions. So again, thank you everyone for your time today. Wish you all a wonderful day. Take care.
Thank you very much, everyone.
Thank you.